Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to TV Skywriter, where I'd like to introduce you to interesting people that I think you need to know. So today we're going to talk about real estate and mortgages, acquiring properties, etc., with mortgage advisor Robert Lewis. Hey, it's time for TV Skywriter. Robert, what's new?
Hey, Miss Pat, how you doing?
Doing great. Real happy to have you here. We have known each other online since, I guess, Blab, like 4 years at least.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have come to be known as the mortgage expert in these parts. As far as I know, you are the most knowledgeable person I know when it comes to real estate and getting ready to purchase homes, etc. So tell us what you do exactly. I said mortgage advisor. What is that?
So I like to say I help people craft, if you will, the best financing for them and their situation as it pertains to residential real estate. That's single family, duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes. So it's just not getting someone a loan, but looking at the total picture, their total goals, and working on the exit strategy all at the same time.
Okay. Now, going back to like 2008, I just want to go back in history just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the heartbreak of going down streets like, I know you're in Texas, but just for Durhamites, still know what I'm talking about when I say South Alston Avenue. Back in 2008, it seemed for a stretch of South Alston, every other house was like for sale. And as a community newspaper person, I focus sometimes on, because my whole idea is helping people. So I'm kind of fixated on the evictions and that sort of thing, not realizing after having watched a YouTube video that I told you about earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
that the market is not like it was in 2008. I thought because of the pandemic, hearing about people losing their jobs and losing their homes, I thought it was very much like 2008. Apparently, it is not. And apparently, the housing market is kind of hot. Can you tell us what's going on, why it's different from 2008?
Yeah, there's a ton of different ways I can try to answer that question, but I think the main differentiation between then and now
Mm-hmm.
is the lack of housing inventory. Okay, at that time there was a surplus, and just from a 10,000 foot view, that's really the crux of the matter today. It's a supply and demand thing. There's a lot of folks looking to buy, and they don't have enough inventory to meet that need.
Okay, now what surprises me is what you just said, that there are
Mm-hmm.
people actually looking to buy. Now tell me if this YouTube video was wrong. This YouTube video said that because of the pandemic, and I guess let's put aside the people who are being evicted because
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with that on the community basis. So this is more nationwide because
Mm-hmm.
you're in Texas. So this YouTube video said that the people who kept working, the government workers, et cetera, the people with the good paying jobs, many of them kept working and were amassing quite a fortune because they weren't doing anything. We were all pretty much stuck at home for an entire year. And they were saying in this video, please correct me if they were wrong there, but they were saying that they realized, I've got all this money. Let's get a better house, or let's get another house, or let's get our first house. And that's so different from 2008. The pandemic actually helped boost the housing market.
Yeah, you had a lot of people in that situation or in that cohort that you just described. I mean, everybody didn't lose a job. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were able to save a lot of money that they may have not have been otherwise due to the lack of mobility and things that we could do.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, I mean, that's true. Okay. But I think the biggest players in the market are those that are really unseen. Let me explain.
Okay.
iBuyers, Zillow, and even institutional investors. There's a lot of money that is outside of our locales, right? Real estate is local, wherever you are. We're talking Durham, right? And I have the blessing, the opportunity to lend nationwide. Okay, so I've dealt with clients from left to right, top to bottom, and so the institutional investors as well as the foreign investors. There's a lot of dollars floating around, Ms. Pat, and so when we kind of, not to turn this into an econ class, and I'll never, you don't. If that's what you saw in that YouTube video, everybody has an opinion. This is my opinion, okay? So I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but from my standpoint, what I'm looking at is a lot of stimulus, right? There's a lot of money floating around, okay? And just real quick, if you print a lot of money, then lower the interest rates and keep them low, people have a incentive to go out and spend said money, right?
Almost a compulsion to spend.
Right. That's what they want them to do.
That's what we do.
Yes, ma'am. And so with that, a lot of people don't realize, and I'll give this example. This is not a pop, but this is a, soda pop, Coke, wherever you're from. So if you take this back to 2008, the cost of this drink was not what it is today. And long and short, that's called inflation. Okay. And so when a lot of money is being printed and a lot of stimulus is out, people look for security, and real estate has always been one of those things that people look to as a safe haven. Okay. And so I don't want to go too deep, but those are some of the things that are different. And yes, one person's mishap is another person's opportunity, unfortunately. That's true. But there's a lot of folks out here capitalizing. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And a lot of people are moving into Durham. I don't know where they're moving from. But yeah, a lot of people are moving here. Now, I was surprised. Durham has been booming for a while. There's been a lot of building going on. You'll be going down Highway 55, and all of a sudden, a whole swath of trees have disappeared, and it's like you see roads being built, and it's like, what's going on? And then the following week, you see houses being built. That never stopped during the pandemic. It never stopped. I have seen so many, I forget what you call them, housing, just new neighborhoods. Yeah, subdivision. Yeah, being built. It never stopped. I thought that the pandemic would put an end to that. Never did. So people,
let me ask you, why would you think, or from your standpoint, and this is good to know, I'm just curious to know, why did you think that the pandemic would prevent housing and things of that nature from moving forward?
I think it's because my outlook is always on the people who have the least and people who need the most help. That's the focus of my paper. So I'm sort of not noticing the well-off people and the people who don't need help. I should pay attention to them as well, obviously, but I haven't been paying attention. I was really enlightened when I watched these YouTube videos, and I'm realizing, but I mean, it is good to, of course, care for the people who are in need.
Yes, ma'am.
But if you want a full picture of your community, I've learned you've got to watch everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's why I missed it, because I was so busy telling people where to get free groceries and where to get help, with legal aid and that sort of thing, and not really paying much attention to those who are doing just fine.
Gotcha. Well, and that's why I love you, Ms. Pat. People's champ, and I know you've been doing this as long as I've known you. So shout out to you and your community. You're a jewel, and not enough of folks like yourself out there, givers, right? But with that said, back to what we're talking about, I also think that even those folks, this is why I think my superpower is, okay? Because I come from the bottom. Some of the young folks might say I got it out the mud, okay? And I want people to rise, okay? And so some of those folks that are in those cohorts that may have needed help and things of that nature, I know for a fact, because I've been looking in North Carolina, and all those people that you alluded to, there's a flight to lower taxes and lower cost. When you look on the coast in some of these places where, you know, a house that you're living in now in California might be $800,000, right? So people are looking
location,
and cost, right? So it's very important for those of us in the community to open our eyes to see the gentrification and things of that nature that's coming, because it's coming, right? You going down 55 and they building them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so my thing is, how do we help some of the folks that come from or that are where I used to be? How do we help them? Right.
Exactly.
So, and I'm sure we'll get to that before it's over, but I do want you guys to know I got some hope for you.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I love watching your show. Who was that young man you do your show with? That's your nephew?
Well, you know how we do, Ms. Pat, you know, auntie, nephew, things of that nature. But actually, we're not related.
Oh, okay.
But his name is 𝗦𝗫𝗪𝗧𝗘𝗥, and he is a young man that I partner with that helps folks when they have credit challenges and things of that nature to get the credit together. So I also have a young lady. She's a CPA. Her name is 𝗫𝗪𝗧𝗘𝗥. So 𝗦𝗫𝗪𝗧𝗘𝗥's name, I coin. He's my nephew. He calls me Unc, and 𝗫𝗪𝗧𝗘𝗥, we call her the professor. So
cool.
They're a part of my team to kind of help folks move forward.
Okay. Now for the rest of the show, I really would like to tap into your knowledge and have you talk to the people in terms of how to get ready to purchase a house. It's not just a matter of, now sometimes, like when I bought my house when I was in Chicago, I bought a you said duplex, but in Chicago, at least in the hood, we say two flat.
Yeah.
So I was paying rent. I was living in Hyde Park, and I said, when my rent goes up to $550, I'm going to buy a house.
Yes, ma'am.
So I went back to the old neighborhood, Woodlawn, which the media calls it a ghetto, but it's just a neighborhood full of people who are still just striving.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not, you know, hey. Anyway, so I bought a 2-flat, and that was quite the adventure. I want to start out, I do want you to share your knowledge, but I just want to tell a funny story and then have you riff off of it. So I didn't know how to look for a house, but I did know that because I wasn't making much money, that I wasn't willing to look at just anything, get my hopes up. So I went with a real estate, what do you call him? A realtor. Who said, well, I understand you don't make a lot of money. Let's pre-qualify. So you're going to laugh. My limit. Okay. This is back in 1991.
Okay.
My limit was $55,000. But you know what? That's how much I paid for that 2-flat. And I got a tenant upstairs and a full finished basement.
So,
but it was in the so-called hood. That same building in Hyde Park would probably easily have been $300,000, easily. But here's the funny story. So the real estate agent asked me this question because she knew that my resources were pretty low. She said, do you have any debt? And I blushed. I said, yeah, I do. I said, I got $600 on my credit cards. And she busted out laughing. I was like, that's funny.
That's no debt. Yeah.
But she said, no. She says, no, in real estate, debt is something that you cannot pay off in a year. That's what we call debt.
Gotcha.
But she appreciated that I at least was honest with her. But
right.
So riff off of that and let us know, how do we really, if we're low income or limited resources or a single parent as opposed to a couple or whatever, right, how do we start even thinking about buying a house in terms of getting ourselves together?
I think you hit it on the head in your story, your example of your first purchase, right? First thing I would say is you must know your numbers. Just like you did, you knew your numbers, right? You knew your exit strategy. Once rent gets to this number, hey, I'm out of here. I'm buying my own. Okay, that is huge.
Oh,
a lot of us don't understand our numbers. So in order for you to even make that mental connection, you had to be on top of your numbers. Number two, Debt is relative, right, to whoever it is associated with, but you had minimal debt, okay? And so when you're coming from a disadvantaged place, you need you need to control everything that you can control, right? And so I think those are the two places that I would start first. Mentally becoming a homeowner, okay? What does that mean, Robert? Treat the home that you live in now as if it's yours. What does that mean? Understand that there's a cost to ownership, okay? And that's a monumental leap, especially coming from a place where, you know, things may have been taken care of for you for a long period of time, okay? And so, does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you first start getting ready to purchase a home, now I went FHA. Okay. I always tell folks, if you're moderate to low income, please think about FHA, because I didn't have to have that gigantic down payment.
Right.
They also inspected the house, the 2-flat rather, and told the sellers that they had to do certain things to get it ship shape and ready, you know, for sale. They had to put up a new fence. They had to fix a couple of things. I can't remember what it was. The fence I remember because it had a big hole in it. I do remember that. They had to do like 3 things. I can't really remember. But that's the good thing about FHA, is that they're looking after you. They help you out. They deal with the sellers and tell them what they have to do, so that you're treated right as the buyer. Again, you don't have to worry about the big down payments. And what are the other benefits?
So
a long time ago for me.
So FHA is an excellent product for all of the things that you just aforementioned. Moreover, if you've had life happen in the form of past credit challenges, okay? But there's a misnomer out here that FHA is the lowest down payment loan product. Actually, on the conventional side, you can go Home Ready or Home Possible, or those are conventional loans that will allow you to put as little as 3% down if you meet the criteria, okay? Now, there's another misnomer of what a lot of people think, that number one, if you're a seller, it's more scrutiny. It's harder to get a FHA loan or accept an FHA borrower opposed to a conventional loan, because in most cases, if you're dealing with the 4 major areas of a home, right? The roof, the electrical, plumbing, or the foundation, regardless of loan type, an appraiser is really going to point that out if it's a problem, okay? FHA affords you more safety type requirements and things of that nature. On a conventional loan, they might not address that fence type situation. But point I'm trying to make is there's loan types other than FHA that will allow you to put down 3% opposed to the 3.5%. Now, another quick thing. So I mentioned FHA, or you mentioned FHA, I mentioned conventional. You also have VA loans, which in my opinion are the best loans ever made. Okay. Wow. And in our community, and I help everybody, but in our community, a lot of times folks that have earned the right to use their certificate of eligibility get talked out of it. Don't allow that to happen. Okay.
Okay. Now, VA is military veterans, right? Veterans,
military veterans, or if you're a part of one of the National Guard units and you've met the Title 10, you know what? Let me back up. They've just had an amendment to that qualification rules for National Guard, Army, and Air Force because of the pandemic. Okay. And those that are listening that fall in this community, you'll understand the vernacular. Okay. So if you have been called up for service under Title 32, now you don't have to meet the most stringent test to use the VA eligibility for National Army and National Air Force Guard, which would be 6 years, okay, under Title 10. Okay. So point I'm trying to make is, if you got a VA loan, don't let a realtor or somebody talk you out of it, okay?
Why would they talk you out of it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Probably more paperwork.
Well, not just there's no more paperwork, right? It's just the misconception, and we have to do a lot more educating, that from a seller standpoint, they think that the appraiser is going to be more stringent on their home, just like I mentioned with the FHA and conventional. Okay. So this is for those out here that are listening. A good realtor, not someone with a license, and I don't want to be disparaging, but if they're just trying to shove you to conventional, you might want to shop around a little bit more, right? But with that said, you also have to be realistic. And that's one of the things that I heard you say when you bought your first home, right? Beggars can't be choosers. That's real. Okay. Yeah. You can't have no money and no down payment and want somebody to pay for everything, especially not in this market. It's not going to happen.
So I had to go back to the old neighborhood. I knew I couldn't afford the neighborhood I grew up in.
You got to get in where you fit in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But another thing that you mentioned about that old neighborhood, if you bought that house today in that old neighborhood, because it's still there, right? How much is it worth today?
The funny thing is, so I bought it. Let's see, I moved in, 1991 during the first, I think it was the first Chicago Bulls NBA championship, because I heard my new neighbors screaming and hollering as I was moving in, because the game was going on as I was moving in. I'll never forget that. Trying to think. So I moved here 2001. So I had the house for almost 10 years. And I think it doubled in value in 10 years, but I think it's pretty good.
It's very good. Yeah. Very good. And it's probably worth $300,000-400,000 a day.
I think I think the person I sold it to, I think he sold it because I was going down my old street and saw one of my old neighbors who said that in NFL, one of the Chicago Bears players' family now lived there.
Cause that's high cotton where you had the cotton where you bought. That's a desired spot now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, actually, Woodlawn is the eastern part of Woodlawn. Chicago's like a lot of cities.
Right.
When you have a real jewel like Lake Michigan, all the houses east by the lake are more expensive. So the eastern section of the neighborhood of Woodlawn is higher priced. And of course, you get lower and lower income as you go west. So I was more on the western end.
But where you were to downtown Chicago, the Central Business District, what was the commute?
I'd say about 6 miles. I would say mid South Side. So still pretty far from downtown. But let's put it this way. When my dad was a kid growing up in Chicago, Black people were restricted between 35th Street and 63rd. Mind you, when I was in Woodlawn, I was on off of 64th Street.
Okay.
So back then, as far as Black folks, the income would go higher as you got closer to 63rd Street. So the housing stock is nice. See, even though the media still calls it a ghetto, they probably don't call it a ghetto anymore. I think there's been quite a bit of gentrification, although not as much on the eastern side. But it's kind of hot. I was told that a lot of those buildings have been sold since I moved. And racially, it's still probably about the same, but it's higher income Black people moving. Whereas the white people and the people with even more money prefer to be closer to the lake, which is understandable. Chicago's like that all across from north to south. Everybody wants to be next to the lake.
While you were talking, I just pulled up Zillow real quick, right? $350 to $400, easy. Trust me. So
in Woodlawn,
because 6 miles from downtown, that's close, right? It's not in the south suburbs. It's not in Tinley Park or New Lenox.
Oh no.
Right. So that's a wealth tip. That's a wealth tip for those that are listening. The closer you could get to the city business district, typically that stuff is high. And if you look in our community, going back to the 60s and 70s, we tended to live around those places because we were the workers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
40, 50 years later, you notice the gentrification is coming, right? And so that's a natural process. We don't need to worry about and fight that. But what we need to learn how to do, and back to your question, to get prepared, now with leverage being the key thing, I'm borrowing the money, my credit has to be together. Okay.
I was going to ask you, thank you. I was going to ask you about that because when I was buying, now my debt was $600, but mind you, I had no children, and I was single and didn't really have a car or, anything like that. But let's talk about the more average type person who has children
Right.
and perhaps more debt.
Mm-hmm.
How do they get that credit together?
So credit is simple, really, when we look at it. And I'm just gonna keep it plain. Got to keep your word. Okay. You're borrowing the money. All right. You got to make your payment and you have to make it on time. And in the credit world, when we talk about seasoning, you know, when you get a good meal, it's seasoned right, Miss Pat? And so seasoning on a trade line, be it an installment or revolving, pardon me, is 2 years, 24 months. So somebody listening, especially if they're starting off, because we got to start talking to the younger folks, right? It takes 2 years to make a thing go right. Okay. So you have to understand, I have to make that payment consistently over 2 years. And I love what you're saying in your situation, regardless of house formation. Okay. Things that we can control, we must control. So in our community, another thing that I see, or in lower socioeconomic communities, we want to feel good. Okay. So car payments are too high. The average car payment that I'm seeing with folks in these cohorts is 25%. Right. So the tote the note places and all those places that we gravitate to, the payday cash loans and things of that nature, all of the vultures in the hood.
Those are like the worst.
Yeah. But there's a lot of money in the hood. There's a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
Okay? They taking advantage. So when you know better, as my big brother used to tell me, you do better. Right. Yeah. So
don't buy foolish things.
Don't buy foolish things. Live within your means.
And don't buy things that you have to continuously pay for.
And when you say continuously pay for, here, real quick, here's the scenario, and this is going to deal with credit in cars. Okay. Because your credit is challenged, right? And you go to the tote the note place, okay? They give you the high interest rate. You feel like they're doing a service, right? But the car is inferior. So inevitably, what happens is the car breaks down before the term is up. So you're like, I'm not paying for a car that I can't use. And so we're in the wilderness in a death circle, and we keep repeating the same thing. The problem is the credit. Okay. So you got to get the credit right so that then you can go out and not buy something that makes us feel good or makes other folks that are in our economic stratus say, ooh, that's not the thing, because we got to get to the house. Exactly. Why? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say exactly, because I know, I mean, you grow up hearing kids say, yeah, I want to get a Ferrari when I grow up. I'm going to get a Benz. You know, and they just think when they look outside and see their Benz, it's like, I made it. As you sit outside your rental apartment. But my thing is, maybe buy that down the road. I've never owned a new car. In fact, the most I've ever paid for a car was the first car I bought, which was $2,000.
And why were you mentally, why were you able to do that? Why were you able to keep yourself from buying, a new car?
Well, I have to admit, thank you to my parents, I grew up relatively comfortably and never had that deep-seated feeling of having to show that I made it. You know what I mean? So I grew up in Chatham, where everybody was pretty much what we call middle class, even though my folks didn't make a lot of money, but we were in the middle class neighborhood. Another thing that my parents taught me a lot is that when they bought their house, they knew people who were making more money than they were, and they were buying fancier, bigger houses in bigger and fancier neighborhoods. And Mom said they wanted a house that they could pay off in 10 years because they wanted to make sure we went to college. So they had things. So they set things up so that certain bills were paid from my mom's paycheck because she made more than my dad. My dad made a little bit over minimum wage, and my mom was a school teacher. So certain things Mom paid for, certain things Pop paid for, while they set aside with savings bonds our college fund. And they bought a house that was just the right size, as opposed to a big sprawling house that they could show off.
So you sound beautiful family, and these are jewels, guys, that Ms. Pat is dropping, and I'm sure that's why you listen to her, right? But she said a lot of things. In other words, from her family, she got and knew and understood what her self-worth was. Okay. And I have a daughter, especially for these young ladies, right? And that is the importance of a family, right? Mm-hmm. But some of us are in single family homes. You still can instill in your children a sense of self, pride, and worth that's not associated with a brand or an item, right? It comes back to those things that we are valuable. I have a word. My word is my bond, right? And these are things that we need to build up. And this is not esoteric. These are some of the underlying problems, right? Because as soon as somebody says, here's $1, nothing's free. The easier it is to get, the spidey senses need to go off. Where's the cost, right? Mm-hmm. Because folks are capitalizing big time. So a lot of jewels that you just said there, right? As far as how you were raised. And then the question was, that's what prevented me from saying, hey, a vehicle is for transportation. That's the purpose. Exactly. Okay. Not to make me better than the next person. Right. Exactly. And so once I understand that, then I'm able to look at things not emotionally, but more from a business standpoint and say, okay, it gets me from point A to point B. How can I do so efficiently, safely, right? And without breaking the bank, because that's one of the worst purchases that you can make if it's not done correctly.
That's true.
From a business standpoint.
That is definitely true. Yeah, don't overspend. And if you have children, plan for them.
Yes.
You know,
that's another thing. Yeah.
I don't know if people do the savings bond thing anymore, where you buy a bond at half its value and then it matures in 10 years. So mom would have, like, let's say a $100 savings bond. She would buy it for $50 and put it up. Mm-hmm. So in 10 years, it would be worth $100.
Right.
I don't know if they do that anymore, but that's how they paid for our college.
Well, bond yields are very, very, very low now, right? So, but the saving aspect, that's the message here. Yeah. Whatever the vehicle is, you have to do your due diligence and your research, but you plan. Mom and dad were planning for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's something else that we have to do. You plan when you purchased your home. You learn so much from your parents. You follow what I'm saying?
I actually did. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, and wealth tip, guys, don't hate where you come from. Mom and them, especially if they raised the family with 5, 6 of y'all, they know something. Okay. Mm-hmm. Eat the meat, spit out the bones, but you never hate where you come from and learn from those things if you can, right? Next thing I would say too, for those that are in a challenged position, once we get the credit together, here's the deal. I don't know who came up with this or if it's an African proverb or whatever, but the saying goes like this. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so with all of the stuff that you just aforementioned, with the housing and the folks coming in and buying and the institutional investors, all that, right? You got to learn how to come together. Okay. And you might have to live in a home with multi-generations, with Big Mom and them. The deal is you got to.
That is how we started.
You see? Mm-hmm. And nothing's wrong with that. You see? So if you can't get it by yourself, open your mind. And is there somebody in the family that we could come together? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
That makes perfectly good sense. Because we did start out in Woodlawn, living with my in the same building as my grandmother and great grandmother. They owned the building, and they allowed us to live there until my folks were ready to move on to Chatham. And like you said, don't hate where you're from. Woodlawn is the neighborhood I went back to. it. Now, I can understand when people say things like that. I can also understand people hating where they're from if they've had really bad incidents like robberies or assaults. I can understand wanting to get away from there totally. So I won't criticize anyone who does hate where they're from. But still, sometimes you have to be like me. You have to realize, well, I grew up in Chatham, but I can't afford it now. I'm going back to Woodlawn, where I started.
And when I said don't hate where you're from, let's not be naive. we're going to be safe. But when I mean learn, there's a lot that's how you became who you are.
Oh,
right?
there's rents in the neighborhood for sure.
Yes. So
Definitely.
I mean, if it's not safe, by all means, I'm not living somewhere where it's not safe.
Definitely,
With
especially
me and my family.
Dad, yeah.
Yeah. But everywhere I've been, that's who I am. That's who Robert is. So I have to learn how to understand those things and value them, because especially us in our community, there's so many subliminals coming towards you that say you're less than. Okay.
And you know what? That's actually why I went into media, because when I moved back to Woodlawn, I realized that a lot of people there felt bad about it. You know, I just live in Woodlawn. Oh, ain't nothing going on here. And they always felt kind of bad. And I actually started the Woodlawn Scoop to show the positives of Woodlawn and to show what was happening in Woodlawn on the positive tip. That's exactly why I started it, because you're right. I mean, to me, there's no such thing as a bad neighborhood.
No, you have a lot of power, Miss Pat. You got a lot of power, and the way you frame it, it's just like anything else. If I see somebody that looks like me doing something, I get hope. I can get inspired. Hey, maybe I can do it too, right?
Exactly.
So that's why stuff like this is important. I love the internet. Okay, somebody younger, older, whatever can resonate. Say, hey, if nothing else, get inspired. Hey, if I could, he looks like me, I could do it too.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Now, when you do help people, when they call Robert Lewis and they say, I'm thinking of buying a house, I'm not rich, how do you work with them? What kind of questions do you ask to get the ball rolling in terms of them finding a place to buy for their very own?
It really, with me, it starts with a consultation, because I've been doing this so long. I have a good idea as to reality, right? So sometimes people call and I tell them you can't afford a home. Okay. And that's the truth. So at that point.
Now, what makes you say that?
Well, your income that you have coming in. Okay. Just had a situation where someone called and they said, okay, I haven't been working for the last year. I'm on unemployment. Well, we can't use unemployment to qualify you for a home loan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. However, after the conversation, if these are your plans, I always like to leave with hope. This is what you need to do. Okay. You need to go back to work, gainfully employed, 6 months. We can use that income then, right? What does your credit look like? Okay. Because if you're not paying cash, you're going to leverage at some point. So what I would say to somebody who comes to me, if they don't have the income, I'm providing solutions and ideas on how to become more productive. Because this is why I wanted to come on your show, Miss Pat. We have to get productive. Okay. I'm not going to get on us, but we're creative people. Okay. And the laziness bug is just rampant. Okay. You have to produce. Producers always eat. And so you guys,
I like that. Producers always eat. I like that.
Producers always eat. And with this economy that we're in, you can take your idea, you can get on YouTube, but work, there's the implication, work is involved. Okay. So if you want to purchase a home, you have to have the income. Okay. If you don't have the income, this is where Uncle Rob is at. What are we going to do to get it? Legally, right?
Legally, yes.
Yeah. Because home ownership, real estate in general, is in name whatever rich person you want to name, and that's a part of the portfolio, right?
Now, I don't know about anything about Texas. I only know Chicago, and I can't even say I know Chicago anymore. I've been in Durham for 20 years.
Right.
20 years. Wow. But here's the thing. I see neighborhoods that people are considered, low income. Let's just say, okay, for you Durhamites, I'm talking about South Street, Enterprise. Okay. So that area is I would say working class / lower income. Okay. And I'm wondering what to do if someone, for example, wants to buy a house in that neighborhood. I notice how can I, how would a young homeowner handle this where there's a neighborhood that it's always been affordable pretty much because it's pretty much like low income, like the neighborhood I moved into in Chicago, where I bought a whole duplex for 55,000. But you notice richer people, many of them of a different hue, building new homes in that same neighborhood, which makes me think they're eventually going to be priced out.
Yeah, yeah.
What happens to people who are looking to buy or who are already living in an area that you can tell is turning over pretty quickly and pretty visibly?
You got to get involved. I just dropped a link. You mentioned South Street, right? You mentioned it a couple of times. There's a South Side revitalization going on there in your city, city of Durham.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Buying a home. Okay.
Yeah. So I would, if I'm a local, I'm a native, I'm starting at the city level. And what type of programs are there what kind of programs are out there that I can take advantage of so I can stay and live in the community, which I grew up in, right? That I'm a part of, that I made.
Okay.
Okay. So you got to know what's out there, the resources. Okay. And then number two, there could be a million programs. I'm back to it again. Can my credit get it? And is my money funny? There's no workaround for those two things. Right. So, because if you don't, I'll say this to motivate you. You can see that other people see the value in where you live.
Exactly. Because, you know, South Street is what I call a gateway community to downtown. It is right next to downtown.
How close is it to downtown?
It's right there.
I just mentioned it before. It's wealth tip. It's close to the central business district. They want to move you out. You've been there when it was bad, right? Don't miss out when it gets good. Get your piece.
Sometimes I call people placeholders.
Yeah.
Where there's a street in Chicago. It was I think it was Armitage, where a lot of artists lived there. It was low rent. A lot of creatives lived there because it was affordable. I called them placeholders because I knew Armitage was too good a street to be ignored by the developers. Those people were out of there. As soon as I noticed them, it's like everybody noticed them. They were like, ooh, let's buy this. They were out of there so fast, it wasn't even funny. And that's kind of how I see South Street, because South Street, that community is very much like Woodlawn, where a lot of people in Woodlawn worked next door in Hyde Park. Remember I told you I was living in Hyde Park renting when I decided to become a homeowner. Hyde Park is the neighborhood where the University of Chicago is.
Man.
A lot of money in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So people in Woodlawn very often were people who worked for the university who worked in Hyde Park. South Street a lot of the people who lived on South Street served the people in Forest Hills, which is a well-to-do community right next door. And so it's ripe for the picking. The housing stock isn't quite up to par in comparison to Forest Hills at all.
It will be. It's coming.
Yeah, they're knocking down old houses and building new ones, and they're looking actually very nice. But I feel sorry for the people who are being displaced, though.
Right. And so what we got to do, and that's what you're doing, you're sounding the trumpet. We got to get out of the sorry mode and you got to move. Okay. And so what's happened is I've had 30, 40 years of low taxes, and I can get by with not a lot of activity. That's changing. So you go back, history repeats itself in a lot of ways, right? So you go back, you look at the urban flight. They left. They went out to the suburbs. Now they cashing those houses out. They're not paying the capital gains on it. They got 400, 500, 600 grand. And guess where they coming? To your neighborhood. They're going to raise the taxes and you got to go.
Yeah, that's true.
So all I'm saying is we got to come. So you see the playbook. You see the playbook. You can cry about it, or we try to do something. Okay, what do we do?
And you can tell when your neighborhood is going to be gentrified because they start suddenly improving the infrastructure.
There are signs, right? Look at the streets and just follow the money. My daddy always told me, follow the money. You know what I'm saying? Follow the money. So infrastructure, things of that nature. You're a community activist. How much information is given at City Hall, town hall meetings? I mean, a ton.
Yeah.
See, these are things that we're not tapped into.
That's true. That's very true.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so again, with all that said, you can see what's coming, you can know what's coming. Can you capitalize off of it? So I want you to get with your family members, right? Here's another thing with us. We got to learn how to stick to. I'm in Texas. Miss Pat is in Durham. We on this live, okay? To get this information out. This is a circulation currency. Money comes from people, okay? You got to quit fighting with your folks. Find somebody that's one accord, one mind. And hey, we going to get a piece on, what street is that you keep mentioning?
South Street?
On South Street, because you already see it. I done heard you say it 2 times. They're there. They're coming.
Oh, they've arrived.
And it's going up.
Yeah. But you're right about the family, though, because my grandmother and great-grandmother lived upstairs, and we lived downstairs. They had a 2-flat. And another thing they did was probably illegal, but my grandmother added my dad to the payroll.
The lease, yeah.
No, to the payroll, because she owned a pharmacy. Her husband died.
Yeah.
And she had to suddenly become a business owner. And she put my dad on the payroll, even though he wasn't working there. But she wanted to help him out. That's her only son.
Yeah.
Okay. And another thing in terms of working with your family, when my mom and dad bought the house that I grew up in, let's see, my mom's mom paid the down payment, and my dad's mom built the garage. And so there were like three groups of families working on this one house, you know. And to me, that's how you really build wealth, when you come from not too much. You gotta have help, and you gotta work with your families.
You go far together, you know. Yeah. And so these are some of the things I preach this in my family, right? Especially for whatever reason, we always want to go and do something else. You're hitting a couple of things. Big Mama had a pharmacy. She blessed her son. Okay. It's facts today. If you have a business and you have a child that's 18 years or under, you can, as of this year, you could get them $12,400 and lessen your tax bill, and they don't have to pay taxes on it.
Say it again.
So if you're a business owner and set up properly, right? And you have an 18-year-old or younger, okay, you could put your kids to work. You can take, as of this tax year, $12,400 is the taxable federal amount that you can make without paying federal taxes on it.
Okay.
And you could take that 12,400 and give it to your son or daughter if they have a job, right? You creating a job, and you lessen your tax exposure by 12,400. And then you've given them $12,000. And let's take the word giving out. You've taught them how to work in your business, add value, and you put them to work. That's what I've done with my kids. Just my daughter last year, right? Now, here's another thing that we haven't mentioned, another behemoth, 10 million pound, whatever in the room. Student loan debt is outrageous.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'm so far removed from that. Yes. That is I think the biggest thing keeping young people from buying is their student loan debt.
So they give you the propaganda about the student loans, and I love education. Hear what I'm not saying, but none of y'all love the debt, because I hear it all the time, and you're not making the payments, and it's deferred, and it's growing. You can't bankruptcy out of it, and this administration told you what they wanted to hear till you got in there, but they are not going to do a debt jubilee. Okay. So I'm talking to anybody on your show, Ms. Pat, that's graduating or coming up to that. There's only a few occupations that are worth going into debt. How far are you away from the University of North Carolina?
Well, that's in Chapel Hill, but we do have Duke University, and right around the corner, our local HBCU, North Carolina Central University, and Durham Tech. So
for a resident of the state of North Carolina to go to the HBCU and the other 2 universities, how much does it cost a year?
You know what? I don't know, but it's a lot more than it was when I was a kid.
It's a lot. So the average person
to pay for our education.
Yeah, the average person that's getting out of school has $26,000 in student loan debt. That's the average. Ms. Pat, you'd be surprised at the number of teachers that I'm seeing with $150,000, $200,000 worth of student loan debt. That's your house payment right there. Okay,
that's got to be done, because it was only $2,000 a year when I was going. And it's, I mean, you see this gray. You know, I'm old. I'm 66. I mean, how old am I?
You look good, Miss Pat. You look good.
But
yeah,
I went to college in the 70s, and I went to Talladega College. It was $2,000 a year.
That's the inflation, though. In the 70s, when you went to college, a dollar bought a whole lot. My mother-in-law, she's from Chicago. We used to be able to go get 2 hot dogs, a drink, and whatever for 50 cents. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Yeah, them days are over, right?
I guess so. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with the college tuition. I just don't know.
Well, but
I'm at a loss.
Here's the deal. That's a whole nother show. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't go get into debt for an experience. You have to look at it as, because we're talking home ownership, right? That's another thing. Cars and student loans are 2 of the biggest barriers, right? When you couple that with credit and income.
But you got to get that degree, though.
You got to get it, but you got to get it and don't pay $100,000 to get it. Because the scriptures, I'm a scripture guy. It's real simple. The borrower is serving to the lender, period. So we need to pump our brakes a little bit, and we applaud education that leads to employment that's commensurate with the investment that we made, right? I don't care what sorority and fraternity and how much fun you had, okay? Because these folks are coming out and they're fussing because the pay don't match the debt. That's facts.
And that's another thing. A lot of people really want to go to the big brand name schools.
Brand again.
And a lot of people are probably saying, Talladega College, that sounds like some little rinky dink. It's a tiny college, only 500 kids. I think they're up to 1,000 now. But you know what? I got a good education at a good price. Talladega might not be the big brand name like Duke and Harvard and all that, but I think I got a wonderful education. And my parents were actually able to afford it. For a person making just over minimum wage, married to a school teacher who they say don't make a lot of money. I think mom might have, at the height of her career, might have made $30,000. But they were able to actually pay for my college and my sister's college because it was that affordable. Something's wrong in this world when you have to take out $100,000. I mean, but I'm just saying, all I'm saying, you don't have to go to the biggest name school. And in fact, if you're really clever, those middle college and what's the early college and middle college, high school where
my daughter just graduated from an early college academy. She has an associate's degree.
Tell us about it.
She's going to community college. She graduated 5th in her class. She's no dummy.
Okay.
Right? Daddy said, because it took me forever to pay off my student loans, right? Okay. With my master's degree that y'all never hear me talk about, because it don't matter, right?
Okay.
I paid a lot for it, but I paid my student loans, okay? Now, I'm not going to let her go get in debt. And I love my baby girl. Daddy's not signing no more student loans. So now she follows my plan, it'll be paid for. And she'll get a house on the other end.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about.
That's my plan.
Okay.
Or you could go with the flow, right? What do they say? The blind lead who, Miss Pat?
Blind lead the blind.
Yeah, the blind lead the blind in most cases. No shade. Hey, guys, if you don't know me, I keep it 100, as they say, okay? So early college academy, associate's degree, and now we devised the plan, and she has to listen. That's the key, because she's 18. You can do what you want to, right? But we're going to go the path that is going to benefit, that's going to accept the 60 hours that she achieved in high school. Why go and start over? That makes no sense.
Exactly. And I just want to point out, for those who don't know about early college and middle college, high school, that means an accelerated learning experience for the child, which means when they graduate from high school, they have already the first 2 years of college taken care of free of charge.
I didn't even know we were going there. I'm a living, we just had one.
No, I love that so much. I mean, I love that.
And
You only have to worry about the second 2 years of college, which means you get those scholarships together. Because if you're smart enough and hardworking enough, because it's not easy to get through early college or middle college, because they're taking college courses while they're in high school.
Amen.
Yeah. So these are dedicated, smart, hardworking kids.
But
get scholarships, right?
Let me give some hope too for folks like me that just got out of school barely, right?
Okay.
There's a ton of trades out here, young men.
Oh, I love
right?
trades.
Look at the Hispanic brothers that's out here. I'm in Texas. They all drive big F42 350s. Those that don't know, right? And they got big bank. Okay. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to go to the military. Everybody's not going to the NBA or the NFL. Okay. That's my son, and I'm gonna quit preaching. My son, very intelligent, not college material. So, no, son, you're not gonna go sit up here and waste my money or get in debt. Okay. My son, okay, and I'm not gonna get in his pockets, but he makes more than most doctors.
Well, you better sit down.
No, that's the facts. I'm just trying to give some encouragement. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
But I love the trades because those jobs, well, you can't send them overseas.
You have a skill. Yeah.
The skilled, I love the trades.
Yeah.
In fact, I learned how important the trades are when I was in Chicago, because there was this trade school. I used to always tell the people about the classes and to take classes at this trade school. They kept moving it out of the reach of the Black folks. They kept moving it west. It kept being further west and then further west until it was out of Chicago completely, because it's that valuable. They wanted to kind of keep it to themselves, more or less. The trades are invaluable.
Just think if we had some home builders now, plumbers. How much money would you be making? You out of? I can't. Yeah. I've been looking for a couple of folks to work at mine. I can't find them. They booked up.
Plumbers make as much as some lawyers in terms of their hourly pay scale.
I know a couple of millionaire plumbers, and you would never know it, right? And I know some doctor degree people that's in full of debt. Obama had student loans to the second term.
He did.
He did.
The president of the United States.
The president of the United States. So love education, right? But we have to start looking at that more from a return on investment. Okay. And last anecdote I'll give. Just had this situation. Had an RN that went to a community college like you're talking about. And one that went to Baylor University. Everybody's heard of Baylor University.
Sure.
Right? So we got one with $200,000 worth of debt, one with no debt, and they both make $80,000 a year. So who's winning?
The person with no debt, for sure.
Yeah, see, it's propaganda.
Financially speaking, yeah.
Yeah, that's a brand. All them brands you buy. You know what I'm saying?
So it sounds like, even though I wanted you to come on the show and talk about real estate, mortgages, and housing, it's actually a whole family thing, isn't it? It's actually a lifestyle decision. Yes. It's not just, what do I want?
Yes.
More like, what can I get? What can I afford? How to build toward it.
Right.
How to deal with the family in such a way that it's like a team effort. Like in my family's case, like I told you, my dad's mom and my mom's mom both helped. And because of their generosity, I was able to grow up comfortably. Of course, we had to work for it because we worked for my grandmother too. Only she didn't pay us, but that's okay. We learned a lot. But it's so important. This is a whole lifestyle decision as to whether and how to buy a house.
We could get on here and say what everybody else is saying, Ms. Pat, but we're going to tell the truth, right? And these are the things that we just spoke about over this hour. If you have discerning ears to hear, okay, it's real simple, because if you do all of those things, if you're a great person, right, and you grow up the right way, and you're able to make a proper decision, okay, your credit will always be excellent. Your money will be in place. And then on South Street, when you see the path of progress coming, you could get in the way too and get hit with some of that money.
You know what? There's two more things I want to point out, because you said be active.
Yes, ma'am.
What they did in Chicago, I think it was either Austin or West Austin. I haven't been home for a while, but there was a low-income area that was targeted for gentrification. And it was very much like Woodlawn was when I was a kid. A lot of us were from Woodlawn and then moved to Chatham, leaving the grandparents in Woodlawn. So it was like an older community. So apparently Austin or West Austin, whatever community I'm talking about, was the same. Mostly older people. They saw gentrification coming. What they did, they stormed City Hall as much as an old person can storm City Hall, and they demanded and got grandfathered in for their taxes, their real estate taxes, because I think that's what forces the people to leave these communities. Oh, Barbara's watching, and she's saying that you are really sharp. I'm surprised she doesn't know you already, but yes.
I know Miss Tomlin. How you doing, Miss Barb?
Absolutely.
She flies the balloons.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what was I saying? Oh,
they went in and advocated for themselves. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm thinking that might be one way to stay in the community, because that's, I think, what's going to happen on South Street as the richer people move in with the poor people. And I shouldn't target them like that, but you can see it happening. You can see like these little barely holding on type houses, and then with a big grand house in the middle. I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from?
And they get those tax bills, and it's terrifying, right?
Yeah, and then they have to start leaving one by one because the taxes go up. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it works that way, but supposedly when, I guess, richer people move in with bigger, more expensive houses.
Right.
So now, I don't know why. Maybe you can tell me why. Why does everybody
even if you had a tax ceiling, for that person that, had that house that's been there. So what happens is that big house comes in and it raises the value of your home. So you might be at a lower or a set tax rate, but if the value of your home goes through the roof, the bill's gonna go up.
So you're happy that you can sell it for a higher price if you want to sell, but you might be sad because if you plan to stay, you have to pay that much more on the property taxes.
And that's another thing too, Ms. Pat. Again, somebody's losing. So these shows, if you're blessed to have a place, first thing I would say, everybody's been talking generational wealth, right? Mm-hmm. Where are those kids and stuff that left? Come see what's happening. Let's keep the house, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we make the decision to sell it, do you really know what you have? Because most folks don't, and then they get nervous because they get the tax bill, I'm going to lose it. And then an investor comes in, right? And flashes some cash, knocks your house down and builds a $500,000 house there and makes $400,000 or $500,000.
Exactly.
So what you're doing, right? You're the people's champ. I love you. You telling those of us that don't know what time it is so that you could get in the way and advocate for yourself or get a piece of the pie. If not, then we got to move around and we got to quit complaining.
And one thing I do want to point out, I want to touch on something that you said that I wanted to get to later, and that is the fact that you need to find out what programs are out there. The city of Chicago had some nice beginner, first-time homeowner, programs.
Yes, ma'am.
To help you buy your first. And in fact, when I first moved here to Durham at that time had a nice program too for first-time home buyers. I don't know what happened to it, but still, it's good to find out, to call your city or go to the website and find out what programs are there for first-time home buyers. A lot of times they will insist that you must live in the home in order to get the benefit. They don't want people to come in, buying these investment properties and getting all these nice breaks.
And I just dropped the link too that you could share with them for what we just spoke to. It's called the Long-Time Homeowner Grant Program for those people that own, right? And this is the city of Durham, and it mentions the South Side. These are the neighborhoods. It's the South Side target area map, the Northeast Central Durham target area, and the Southwest Central Durham. Okay. So, and I'm in Texas, y'all. It's the internet. Google it.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Thank you.
Don't be embarrassed. We look, this team, we're a team. Teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah.
I like that.
Yes, ma'am.
So would you say, except for the ones who approached you who are pretty much unemployed and you said, well, maybe it's not the time to buy a home, for the most part, would you say that there is a house for every buyer. They used to say that. Is that still true nowadays?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. What I will say, and I'm sounding the alarm. This is a PSA. Buy while you can, because I don't see prices coming down anytime soon for a myriad of reasons. Okay. And now that the big investors are in, and some of the studies and things that I'm reading for you millennials that are now forming households, having kids and things of that nature, right? And you're ready to buy, it's not a guarantee. And home ownership is not a guarantee for everybody. It's a privilege. Okay. So get serious, look at your numbers, minimize your debt, right? If you're going to school, make it a business decision and not one that makes you feel good and have all the other broke folks cheer you on. Okay. Know and understand your numbers, right? Listen to your family, consult. There's wisdom in a multitude of counsel, but understand who you're counseling with, right? And once you get all of that, right? What did Luther say? A house don't make a home. A house is not a home if there's no one there to see. I can't sing, y'all.
I can't do that.
Right. So all those things make up home ownership and community. You see, and it's a beautiful thing if you can be a part of it, because a lot of wealth is built with those homeowners.
I totally agree. And there's nothing like growing up in your own house, even if you don't. Actually, I had a friend whose parents didn't really get it together until they were in their 50s. They bought their first home in their 50s. And the kids were kind of like, well, we're grown now. So, but still, they wanted to have their own home, and they did it. It took them a while. I mean, they had hard lives. I don't want anybody to know who I'm talking about, but they had very, very challenging lives. And if it takes until your 50s, hey.
They did it, right? They did it. Yeah, better late than never. I'm from that school. So, just make sure home ownership is for you. And if that's the case, I've never not been able to help anybody. Okay. Choose your advisors wisely, right? There's that saying, you do business with folks that you know, like, and trust. Let me add some value. How do you know, like, and trust somebody in this environment? I do a ton of videos. I come on and do stuff like this, right? Didn't ask anybody for $1. I'm real hesitant when Ms. Pat says, okay, how do people get in contact with you? Not the point, because I understand money comes from people. Okay. And if you can't feel my spirit that I'm for you, then I'm not for you. I don't come from a scarcity mindset. So you find somebody that you know, like, and trust. If you're somebody that needs to be knee to knee and press the flesh, find somebody local. Tap into your network. Miss Pat knows everybody in Durham. You feel me?
I'll throw some names at people.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? Utilize your net worth. Your net worth is tied to your network, and you got a heavyweight in the community, right?
Well, thank you. And I do want people to know that they need to follow you if they want to watch your show on Facebook, because it is so useful.
Yes, ma'am.
You appreciate that. Serious knowledge with the young man who I didn't realize wasn't your real nephew, but his name is 𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗘𝗥 Taylor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's a good show that you all do.
I appreciate that. That keeps us going.
You really break it down. I really like that. Because when you really think about it, this isn't really rocket science. It's a lot of common sense, and in some cases, teamwork. And like you said, know your numbers, set your goal, go for it.
Yeah, and just be realistic, and what's for you is for you. I believe that.
Yeah, and you don't have to have the biggest house on the block. That's another thing. Because the house I'm living in right now, it's a real standard, plain ranch house. A friend of mine, her sister moved to Hawaii. She has a similar house. She had to pay 3 times as much, but it's the same house.
Right.
So,
location.
Yeah, it's all about location. All about what do you want?
Right. Hey guys, too. Another quick thing. If because I see this a lot, Miss Pat, a lot of the advertising that you see, you have to understand it's advertising. Their goal is to create a lead. What do I mean by that? Most of the things that you see online, buy a $500,000 house and the payment is $1,000. Yeah, read the small print, okay? Those, and that'll tell you the scenario that's based, right? Whenever you buy a house, you have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. You're going to have an escrow account. That's where the servicer collects money for your taxes and insurance, okay? So here are a couple of numbers that I want you to know. Whenever you see that house that you think you want to buy, the purchase price, it's going to take 8 to 10% of that sales price to get into the home. You may not have to pay the whole amount, but that's what it's going to take, okay? Number two, once you buy a home, and this comes from VA, this is why VA loans are very successful. You take the square footage and multiply it times 14 cents, 0.14. And if you take that dollar amount from day one and you put it to the side, that's for your maintenance. Whenever life happens, you will have the money to service the home. If nothing ever happens, that might be a retirement account, help the babies go to school, whatever. But again, we're planning, right? We know the numbers, and we're not going into a house and just like college. We went to college. That's not the goal. The goal is to maintain the home, pass it down to the next generation.
Exactly. I love that. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. I tried to get you on a few times, and it was well worth the wait because both of our schedules were kind of crazy there. So glad you came back on. And feel free to invite yourself back because you dropped some serious knowledge. I am really, and if later you want to come back to the, on Facebook and put some more information down in the comments.
Okay.
People would love that because they do need to watch your show if they're serious about getting into, buying their own home. And it's residential, not commercial real estate.
Yeah, I do commercial, but this channel, this is focused. So residential.
Yes. Very important. Thanks again, Robert.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The man. You are seriously the man. Thanks again. Okay. Take care.
All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. That was awesome. Super awesome. So that is it for TV Skywriter. Be sure, if you're in Durham, to read the Durham Skywriter at durhamskywriter.com. Actually, you don't have to be in Durham. You just have to want to see what an all-positive community paper looks like. Also, if you want to be a guest on TV Skywriter, just let me know. Just find me, durhamskywriter@gmail.com, or just follow Durham Skywriter on Facebook. Also, I have a daily show called Bull City Hangout. You don't have to be from the Bull City to be on the show, but I do it at noon Eastern from the Durham Skywriter Facebook page. Also, the Patricia A. Murray channel on YouTube. And also, it's 10 o'clock a.m., I believe, on Saturdays. So with that, you have a beautiful day. I will see you next time. And ciao for now.